Call this meeting to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Wolf.
Here.
Councilmember Capes.
Here.
Mayor Montgomery.
Here.
Councilmember Strawn.
Here.
Councilmember Rayburn.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please bow your heads for a moment of silence. Thank you. Council, do we have any items that need to be added, deleted, or changed on the agenda?
I do not. No.
Have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. And do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent
Second.
agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Katie, do we have anyone signed up for public comment here, period?
Nobody signed up.
Okay. Dave, would you introduce us to our new captain?
Yes. We have had a changing of the guard, so to speak. I know everybody knows that the Guilford County Sheriff's Department provides police services to our town under contract. And we have had excellent services from those who have proceeded. And one of those, I won't mention his name, but former Captain Lawrence Strawn used to actually have this district
That was a long time
a
ago.
long time ago, many, many years ago. But I wanted to introduce Captain Brian Hall, who will be the new district representative, who will be serving us in this area. So I wanted to introduce him. And Captain, if you would come forward and share greetings with the board.
Gladly. Thank you, sir. That gracious introduction. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Brian Hall, 24-year veteran of the Sheriff's Office. I think you will find probably the best captain that the Sheriff's Office has ever had. Present company in
What, FBI National Academy, right?
Absolutely.
227, what's yours?
264. No, this is actually my second tour of duty here. I was back here in '08 and then been on a little tour for the last 13 years of every other division within the Sheriff's Office. So made my way back here, and I'm looking forward to working with you all. Do not hesitate to contact me if there's anything I can do for you. I did get notification that you guys were inquiring about the vehicles. I'll give you a quick update on that. They're in the process of trying to get 2 more because they're way out over the mileage you guys want them to be at. We have one that's about 150 and one that's about 130. And so they're having a really hard time even finding vehicles at this point. They're going all over the East Coast trying to find them. So that's being worked on now, and they've assured me that the first 2 that come in will move forward with the replacement. So don't know what you guys expect. Do they typically give you a quick crime report or anything, or I'm happy to do that, or whatever y'all tell
In
me.
February, we usually get a yearly report.
A yearly report I am not prepared with right now.
You've got some time.
You've got some
I
time.
got some time. You I had can wing it. I can wing it. No, happy to be here. You guys let me know if you need anything.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just your personal cell number, we'll all need that.
I'm sure you will.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And while we're introducing, we have a few other people to introduce. And Mayor, you'll notice I'm wearing your glasses. They're a little classier than the ones that I have, but they're definitely yours. And I got them from the second drawer in our desk.
Look good on you, Dave.
So I did want to, I know at the planning board meeting, I introduced our interim town clerk. And I shared with them that I had just noticed that our full-time current town clerk was expecting a baby. And I hadn't noticed that until that day, and So it was appropriate that we would find an interim town clerk to work with us and to work with you. And I'm going to embarrass Nancy and ask her if she would come up. This is Nancy Avery, unaccustomed as she is. She'll get me later, I can assure you. But we are delighted to have Nancy Avery with us. And she was the town clerk in Curry Beach, and she is a certified municipal clerk, and she will be working with us until Katie returns. She's very experienced, and she started last week, I think. 2 weeks ago. How time flies when we're having fun. But she's done an excellent job. She's very knowledgeable and will be an able replacement until Katie returns. And we're expecting little Reese any day now. So if you wanted to say a word to the board, this is our board.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here and help out. Katie's ready.
I'm happy that she's here.
There's one foot in the door saying, okay, need to do this, and the other one's like,
Right.
but I'll do the best that I can for you.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Welcome to the team.
And while we're still making introductions, I have a special guest here, and someone who has not yet started. And I'm going to ask Faith Wilson. She said, "You mean you're going to call me up there?" I said, "Yes." Come up. And we are delighted. We advertised for an accounting specialist, and she applied and was chosen just as our very top choice for that job. And she's got a degree from High Point University. She's been an assistant finance director for the Thomasville City Schools. She has been a finance director in Spencer, North Carolina, and she's had probably 10 or 12 years of banking experience. And she is bringing those talents to serve and to assist Judy Gallman, our finance officer, and she'll be working directly with her and helping to strengthen the operations of our area. So Faith, if you want to share something with them.
Good evening, everyone. I'm looking very forward to coming here.
Thank you.
Everyone, I'll be here in, I guess, probably about a little over a week.
Okay.
After Thanksgiving.
Great.
And I'm very excited. A little
Great.
closer to home from where I am now, because I live in Trinity, so very excited to be coming. this
Perfect.
way.
That's great.
We're glad to have you with us.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And I did work with her in that town, and I know of her qualifications and experience, and I know that she'll do an outstanding job. We have some other folks that I think are here, and in our golf maintenance area, I wanted to ask Wes Moore and Nick Brown to come up. The dynamic duo, I'm not sure who is Batman and who is Robin, but they are here, and I wanted them to introduce themselves. And Nick actually operated his own landscape business, and he's joined us as a groundskeeper too, and has already provided some leadership in our area. And Wes, he started in August, and Wes started in July, and we are delighted to have these two folks with them. And we, for the first time in many years, we are at full strength in our golf course.
Wow. Excellent.
Nicely done.
Say a word.
I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to many years. Glad to have you here. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Welcome
Appreciate it.
aboard.
And we hired this fellow to bring up the average height
Yeah.
of the mayor and myself, so
We need this.
we were a little short, but Wes is here with us.
How's everyone doing?
Great.
Good,
Great.
Glad you're
Welcome aboard.
here.
Welcome.
Weston, I'm a local boy, and thank you for the opportunity, and looking forward to it.
We're glad to
have
have
you
you
here.
with us.
Welcome to Jamestown.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And one more person that came to our recreation department is Josh Brown. Now, Josh is here to bring down the average age. We've already handled height and the average age, but he has started in November and been on the job maybe, 2 weeks? 2 weeks, and we're delighted to have him with us. Already, we're hearing some great reports from Scott about how well he's performed. And if you wanted to say hello to the board.
Hope everyone's doing well, and I'm really excited to be here, really.
Great to have you.
Glad to have you with us. Thank you.
I'll say, Scott has told me good things about him.
Yes, he has said some really great things about him. And so these are some of the new folks that we have. I know the board, I've told everybody that this mayor and this board appreciates and supports the folks that work here. And that's shown by your actions over time. And so they're all delighted to be here, and we're delighted to have them. I think we've picked the best of the best, and we just look forward to a bright future for all of those that have joined us. So at this point, I will sit back down.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave.
Mr. Gerken, I believe you have a certificate to present.
Good evening, Ms. Mayor. Good evening, Town Council. I want to introduce myself as Bob Gerken. I am a volunteer with AARP here in North Carolina and also across the country. If you would allow me to kind of go to the side, I'd like to make this presentation to both the council and also to members of the town that are attending.
Excellent. Rebecca, would you accept this on behalf of the council?
Absolutely.
Please allow me to present this certificate. Oh, okay. Usually people tell me to quiet down. So please allow me to present the certificate to Councilwoman Ribbon and the mayor and the town council and also the town of Jamestown. We are very pleased to invite you to participate and submit this certificate as the 85th community in the United States that has become part of the AARP network of age-friendly states and communities. In addition to that, this organization is also part of the World Health Organization Global Network of Aging Cities and Communities. So with this, you are part of a worldwide community. The task that you have before you, and we believe that you are prepared, anxious, and have the talents to address the aging population as we all continue to age and assist in a friendlier community to live in, addressing housing, addressing cycling, sidewalks, medical, anything that comes to play. So again, thank you for this opportunity to present this. And we wish you the best. And please reach out to me if you have any additional needs. I'm sure I'll be part of it. Again, thank you, and thank the community, and I wish you the best. I know you'll make Jamestown proud. I know you'll make Guilford County proud, the state of North Carolina, and the whole U.S. Again, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Dave, would you review the new public records request policy?
Yes.
For this, please?
And as much as all of the new employees would love to stay to the end of this meeting and not miss one thing, I will, if they need to go, I will dismiss them at this time. If you want to. Now, if you want to stay, you're welcome, but if you need to go, I appreciate it. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna appreciate it if you go. But they're free to leave if they need to. One of the things that we talked about at our September meeting and even before is the need perhaps to update our public records request policy. And I submitted this at our September meeting for review by for information for the board. And last meeting, we had a very heavy agenda, and so I figured I would bring it back at this point. And I wanted to go over this a little bit. You do have a copy of the one that we had, and then we have a copy of the one that's recommended. And I had some of you ask to say, well, Dave, where did y'all get this policy? And we did go through the Institute of Government, and we went through our town attorney who researched, and we came up with a policy from the school boards, for the state. And then we reviewed it and perhaps made a few tweaks, and we had put it on the agenda and are recommending for adoption for the board. And one of the things that I said at a previous meeting is that we have received just a lot more requests in the last 12 to 15 months than perhaps we have had at any other time. And the nature of the requests have been, so to speak, in degree and magnitude. And some of the requests, might have us going through 10 to 20,000 records to be able to, respond. And so our clerk has been very busy, and we now have Nancy Avery in to help us out. And one of the things that we thought might help us in this particular, there's 2 or 3 requests that are going to be very large, is that we were able to come up with some software that we're going to get. And we're not purchasing it, but we're going to be, if you will, renting it for 30 days. That would allow us to go through these records a lot better, and for us to clear out the requests that we have on hand. And one of the things it has in the new policy and the old policy is that we, when we get a request in, that we make an estimate, of the different costs that are had, and that we would take up 75% of that in advance for the different costs. Certainly things that are less than a couple hours, we do that. But when you're asking for any and all of the records pertaining to something that might go back, 5 to 7 years or more, it requires just a lot of research. And we've been doing a lot of that by hand, and it just takes a lot of time. And so we had several of these come in, and one of the things, we could not, release our staff to work on these without getting our work done. And now we're going to take advantage of having Katie in, as long as we have her, and Nancy in. And we're going to spend a little bit of money for some software for 30 days to help us get through these different requests. And so the software that we're looking at might cost as much as $750 to go through this. The new policy does allow us, say after a 2-hour period, to charge a $31 an hour charge.
I think that's 4 hours.
Excuse me, after 4 hours, a $31 charge per hour. And if you ask about how, and that wouldn't include the town attorney's time, but it's just the time. And a lot of times a request will come in, and when that request comes in, it'll generally received by the town clerk or the town manager. We take a look at it. The clerk gathers the information. If it's a planning issue, then we may have our planning director, our planner looking at it. And then it would be me who would be looking at it, and we would turn it over to the town attorney. So you can see that to make sure that we get the information right, that a lot of the different requests are looked at by a lot of different people. And so it's a very time-consuming thing. Now, when I was in the town of Mooresville, we had 550 full-time employees. We would just say, handle it and get it done. But when you're in Jamestown and you have 30 employees, it really does put a strain when the requests are so large and you know, spread abroad in terms of subject matter. And we have requested that people, rather than say any and all, try to narrow the scope so that it, you know, that we can get to it in a more timely fashion. And I did mention the last time, in the last, say, 15 months, we've had 36 different requests that have come in, and that's a lot more than have come in the past. And these have been rather lengthy requests. So in order for us to be timely in responding, I'm going to use this software over the next 30 days and see if we can't put these, you know, get these requests out as quickly as we are able. And I know that y'all have had a chance probably to go through this. And as for me, I would be recommending that the mayor and the board approve this. I think there was a question this morning that some of the board had about you know, putting in more procedures into it. And I think that could be a good thing. A lot of times when we have like an HR policy, we have a policy, and then we develop a procedure. So in this particular case, I think we have a good policy, and perhaps it needs a procedure. And I know Martha, who helped to do the last policy in 2005, is very experienced in this, and she had some suggestions for it.
Well, really, if you compare, they're pretty similar,
They are.
actually. But the current policy, compared to the proposed policy, I think, you know, the main thing is that we want to fulfill our public records request as quickly as possible and with least confusion to the public and to the staff. So the current policy outlines the procedure more for the public to know how to actually go about getting a public request, whereas the new one, or the proposed one, just basically says you can go on the town website and go to the town hall. So I did wanted to add some language under that on the proposed policy, under the coverage and methodology, item 2, which I would just like to see added, that written requests may be sent to the town via email to town clerk, faxed in person at the town hall, or by U.S. Postal Service to 301 East Main Street, P.O. Box 848, Jamestown, NC. Telephone and in-person requests are also accepted at the town hall during normal business hours. Such requests shall be transcribed by the staff member receiving the request on a request form to ensure that the request is sufficiently specific for the custodian to know what records are being sought. Also, the only other difference between the two, our current policy states that the town manager should also receive this public records request. The proposed one just states it goes to the town clerk. I think we should say all requests should be made to the town clerk and a copy forwarded to the town manager. A town our size, I think the town manager should know all public records that come in. We're not a Spencer or wherever you said there was 500 employees, so those were my improvements on it.
I know we met this morning, and certainly that's acceptable to us. I think a good
Quick question about that, Martha. You said by telephone, they can request it by telephone as well? Mm-hmm. Shouldn't we have something in writing from them?
Well, at least how we handled it before, we have the request form, and if someone calls it in, we fill out that request
Gotcha.
form for
Okay.
them. They may not want to come in, you know, you don't have to give your identity, but you have to give enough information that we know how to get it back to you. So,
Okay.
You know, we hope to have this on our website, you know, as we are moving to a digital age where people, you know, can fill those out and send them in to us. But these recommendations, I think, are good ones. And if the board wanted to include that in the approval, that would be fine for the staff.
Any other discussion?
A couple of questions. Beth, have you reviewed, and are you okay with it all?
yes, sir.
Okay? And then just a comment, last meeting, we had an individual come in and make comment and statement that you had called that person out in the September meeting. I went back and viewed the YouTube and records, and I don't recall or could not find any mention of anyone's name during that meeting, so I think that.
There wasn't.
Yeah, I agree, yeah. I searched too, I didn't see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It
think
was
that
unnecessary
That
for
person
that.
that called you out, and I guess ultimately calls the council out, was incorrect. No names were called. I just want to make sure that got out there.
Agreed.
And I had just one more thing. So under coverage and methodology in the last paragraph, in the event a requester chooses to inspect records at Town Hall, I just was wondering if maybe it should say the records will be made available during the town's regular business hours, just to go ahead and, state
Okay.
up front. This is not, I know it says a time mutually agreeable, but,
Yeah, that'd be good.
okay.
Okay.
So we would recommend it with those additions, and I think I think the town attorney's done a great job, and I think it would help us in the future. And the one thing that I'm definitely sure of is that things change as we go forward, and things in the past that have not been issues can become issues, and then we need to address them. And I think this is an appropriate response on the part of your staff and hopefully on the part of the board as we pass it.
Motion to approve based with the changes that Martha and Rebecca mentioned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
And I have these amendments written up for the clerk. I'll be glad to give you at the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
Paul, would you like to update us on the DOT projects?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Giving you an update. Some of these projects we've had some movement on, some we haven't. I'd like to thank Councilman Wolf. She met with Wright Archer of DOT today. I had a meeting that I had to attend, and he had canceled our meeting last week, last minute, so I appreciate that. So she's going to know more about that meeting, because I've only got notes on those. But the first item, the pedestrian signal head across the street to the Black Powder site, we have spoken with, or I've spoken briefly with the owner. The issue's right away. DOT has some new geometries, and I need to spend more time looking and seeing what our best options are. But due to the lack of right of way, it's not an easy solution without acquiring right of way. The Ganaway Street, the pedestrian crossing. Y'all spoke about it at length today, and it sounds like DOT is looking at options. There's some issues at the federal government that I think they're going to consider letting us pull up some signs that are in the area, which will facilitate the early warning portion of it. And the solution they thought that we could go with is not going to be a viable option. The Mendenhall Home Place crosswalk, that plan has been submitted to the State Historic Preservation Office and also to NCDOT, so it's in review, trying to get that crosswalk project wrapped up. The pedestrian crossing at Guilford Road and East Fork Road, we completed the work and felt good about it. Then yesterday I got an email from a citizen, same problem with people, I'd say, coming through, making a left turn onto Guilford Road. So I have forwarded that information to DOT and requested that they revisit it as a safety issue, because we don't want anybody getting hit. On the Oakdale Road closing, as I think everybody's aware, they're building the on-site detour. The library inlet, as we discussed last time, that one DOT is maintaining. Our waterline project on East Main Street, from Dillon to Teague, that's been sent to DOT. It's in review. I've yet to receive comments. I don't believe he alluded to where it was internally. I don't have a way to track it inside their building. The East Main Street sidewalk project, I think everybody's aware, they've got the sidewalk finished. It's now walkable. We've got the lighting under contract with Duke Energy. The lighting within the railroad corridor, I've held off and separated that for a separate contract because one can happen very quickly, the other's going to be time-consuming. But we are working through those issues. And we're waiting on DOT to meet us for a punch list, because there are several smaller items. There's fencing that's got to be put up to corral the area off better. We've seen vehicles going down into that area, which has been very disappointing. So we're trying to get that taken care of. We've yet to hear from DOT on the closeout of the East Fork pedestrian bridge. I did receive a copy of the Oakdale Road Sidewalk Project spend plan. I've yet to complete it. I understand why the DOT, they kind of looked at us, they kind of glazed their eyes over, but it is their document, but we'll get through it. But it'd be nice if we had an example to understand what they really.
He did send you a form?
Yes.
Okay.
Got it last week. Of course, the Penny Road project is in the future. The surveyor did finish the work on the East Fork Road soccer complex. I think we just want to have that as a CIP project. It may not ever get any traction, but we do have a parking issue on days when there's a lot of soccer going on Saturdays. And we have not heard anything from DOT on the pedestrian crossing at Haynes Inman School or the crossing on Millis Road, but as your synopsis said, you all discussed it.
I've made very much aware that we hadn't heard anything from him. He swore he would get back to us real soon.
And thank you for meeting with him.
Oh, yeah. And then, like I think I'd also sent you, he claimed that he was getting pricing on that paving. You may want to, because I know council had asked about that, you may want to tell him.
Yes, they're looking at resurfacing East Main Street in the Lydia project area, and they're going to use a thinner pavement structure. We had some restriping in the contract for the work. They're going to have to do some of it if they don't resurface. If they resurface, they'll do the whole thing, but that'll be part of the resurfacing contract. And we're just waiting on a response from DOT. I put the request in to start at Teague and go to Yorkley Lane, because that was pretty much the limits of the disturbance.
The fencing that you talked about for the Lydia Tunnel?
Yes.
What's the plan there? I mean, how soon or how far out are we as far as getting that done so ghost hunters don't show back up or something?
I called the fencing contractor myself, even though fencing's in the contract, and met with them trying to push the project along. And we discussed, we have two types of fencing. We have a 4-rail on this side of the tunnel and a 3-rail on the opposite side. This side, it'll be on both sides of the sidewalk, funneling traffic into the tunnel.
Good.
The other side, it's just along kind of the toe of that slope. I have not got a response back, but the most cost-effective way to do it is to get it'll be their fencing contractor, or going through the general contractor on the project. So they're to work things out and get final pricing.
One more thing. After all the grading and work that's been done on the far side of the tunnel, do we need to worry about or possibly consider putting up any type of parking situation so people know they can't just drive up there?
I think that may be a very real concern. With Arbor Day celebrations, in the past, we've gone and planted trees. I've spoken to Duke Energy and asked them to get me in contact with their urban forester. I mean, if we could put in a natural buffer, to me, that would be a win, because it is a drainage and access easement to us. It is Duke's property. And you probably noticed there's like a little driveway there that we left in. It was part of the construction work. They asked us if we would want them to tear it out or leave it, and we felt like, well, there'd be a time it may benefit us, so leave it, but we are going to at least have to put a chain or something across that area. But I'd love to see us be able to do some type of, work with Duke Energy and do some type of reforestation and make a area that way.
Yeah, I like that better.
We can work that out.
Cool. Thank you.
On parking, is there a possibility, I keep seeing more vehicles parked on this side of the pedestrian bridge at East Fork? Can we get some no parking signs out there so law enforcement can enforce it?
I'll request it from DOT. We absolutely can put them in the ground. I don't know what type of approval that I have to get from them, but we do see what you're observing. I mean, it's pretty bad on this side.
Yeah.
It'd be worth giving
They're
it a
just,
shot.
they're tearing it up, you know, they're going fishing, which is illegal where they're going to do it, and that's where they're parking and going in, so I've seen them coming out with buckets and poles, so I know that's what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
Martha, did you have anything to add to those DOT projects that
No, no.
happened today?
No,
Okay.
very good
Thanks.
summary of what happened today.
Okay, thank you. Matthew?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here this evening to consider an annexation request under General Statute 168-31. We have received a petition for annexation of property at 5300 Mackey Road, 2221 Guilford College Road, 2207 Guilford College Road, and 5303 Mackey Road. Now owned by D.R. Horton, but commonly referred to as the Johnson Farm. And as a first step, the town council directed the clerk to investigate that petition by adopting a resolution that instructed her to do such. And the clerk and the town attorney have investigated the petition. They found it to be sufficient. And so the public hearing on the matter was scheduled for this evening. As discussed at the last meeting, the matter is not really ripe for discussion at this point. The staff does respectfully request that the town council continue the public hearing without further advertisement until the December the 21st, 2021 regular meeting. I know that this is a public hearing, and so we're going to open that for discussion this evening, but we're asking you to continue it until the 21st. Any questions at this time? Thank you
sir.
very much.
Thanks, Matt.
If we have no discussion, council, I'd like to open the public hearing to anyone who happened to be present tonight, if they wish to speak on this matter, and then we will just continue it until the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay. If there's anyone that would like to speak about this annexation at this time, please come to the podium, state your name and your address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Gloria Vaughn, 721 Guilford Road, and I have a couple of questions. Has this property already been sold to D.R. Horton? So that is indicating to us that it has already been almost a done deal. Am I right or wrong with that?
The property has been sold.
DR.
We are in the process of going
Right,
through
and
the
they are
procedures.
builders. And so to me, if it's already been sold to them, do we even have a choice or a voice, is what I'm asking.
That's what we're here to hear your voice. We're not here to have a
Well-
discussion with you. If you would like to give us your information, we'll be glad to
Okay,
consider
from what I
that.
can tell, as you heard, I live on 721 Guilford Road. Now, if I remember correctly, this same town council, or the town council, decided that we were going to have less traffic when the new road that goes to Sheets, Guilford College Road, was extended. Well, we're having more traffic than less. Now, if y'all can explain to me how we are going to handle 360-some acres of close units with a lot of people and have less traffic, I want to hear it. And like I said, it's going to be, I am a licensed real estate agent, so I'm familiar with how many units go in an acre. We're talking about 360 acres. And I just wonder where all these other people that live in this area are tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gwendolyn Flood. I live 5600 Wellesley Drive West, Greensboro. So I want to know how this is going to affect me because I live on the end of Adams Farm Parkway with T's at Wellesley Drive and Adams Farm Parkway. How is this annexation going to affect me and where I live? Because I got a paper in the mail saying that it might affect me somehow or another, so I don't know.
That would be something that you would need to address with the town staff. At this point, the council is here to hear your comments about the property. We're not here to answer questions.
All right.
But we'll be glad to review that with you as the town staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Do I have anyone else who would like to speak at this time? Seeing none,
Can I say one more thing? Can I come again?
sure, you were still within your 3 minutes.
It will take 4 seconds. I was just looking, Matthew Johnson is the town manager, director. He's also the owner of that property, or was, am I correct?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
That's a different.
Different family.
Matthew, do I need a motion from the council to continue this?
Ma'am, I have My name is Jeff Quinn. I live at 4 Ted Court in Whittington Hall, which backs up to Guilford College Road. I just purchased the property within the last 6 weeks, so I have concerns like that lady does about the traffic. There's more traffic than I anticipated, and I'd like to understand, and I'd like to know who I should contact about what type of traffic is going to increase, and is this a done deal? Because I wasn't aware of it when I purchased the property, and I'm quite upset about that, but I'm just wondering where I go, who I talk to.
If you will call the town hall, we'll be able to direct you.
Okay, so is it a done deal, like that lady asked before? Is this-
Property has been sold,
Okay,
but there has been no other action taken other than that.
so will you and the council be approving that action?
Yes.
So, and you haven't done that yet at this point?
We have not.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
But can you just clarify, he said we would be approving
Any actions
any action
that would be taken.
or disapproving?
Or disapprove?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Council, do I have a motion to continue the public hearing to December the 21st?
Motion to continue the hearing until December the 21st.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Anna, would you discuss the LDO with us?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight I'm presenting several changes to the LDO, or Land Development Ordinance, specifically Article 74 and 24. I'll just go in numerical order, so starting with Article 17, sign regulations. A lot of changes to this article are just formatting changes. This article was printed in landscape, the only one that way. I've reformatted it to portrait mode, which should increase user friendliness. The photos have been updated to be within this decade, and some captions added, some basic indenting and spacing, spelling cleaned up. There are also some clarifications made on allowed sign locations. There were some conflicting measurements that have been cleaned up, and some conflicting design requirements. So overall, the sign regulation in Article 17 should just be easier to read and follow for any resident or business owner trying to get a new sign. Article 24 is the Nuisance Abatement, Property Management, and Minimum Housing Code. Earlier this year, we had directed from council, asked Alliance Code Enforcement to review this section of our code for any needed updates based on their experience working in other jurisdictions. Alliance Code Enforcement, as you know, works in over 14 other towns, so they've seen it all and know what works for enforcement. The main additions to this section are the additions of the minimum housing code and the minimum non-residential standards. Specific guidelines and requirements of this ordinance are set by general statute. Previously, Article 24 basically just addressed unsafe structures, so this addition of minimum housing code standards and minimum non-residential standards allow the town to take enforcement action and abate issues without having to always call upon the county housing inspectors. There is some crossover between minimum housing code and non-residential. There's specific standards, obviously, for commercial buildings that aren't going to apply to housing, like parking lots and signage, and vice versa. So the primary purpose of these Article 24 updates is a lot of housekeeping. Some updates from 160D and the ability for the town to enforce complaints that get generated in town and allow us to address them and take enforcement actions. I do want to note two minor changes that are from your packet version. They're on the table in front of you. spoke with Councilmember Wolf earlier, and she had asked for some clarifications on these two sections. So page 64 and page 88, you should have them in front of you. There's some clarifying language. It specifically mentioned the Historic District Commission, which we do not have currently at the town of Jamestown. So I've left in Historic District Commission, because who knows what will come. But I've added the or town council if no commission exists. I've also added some clarifying language for the maintenance code administrator, just clarifying that the planning director or their designee shall act as that position. So that is that. Sarah Glanville with the planning board is here to share their recommendation with council, but if you have any questions before that, I'm happy to answer them. And Beth has taken a look at it, as Martha wanted me to double check.
Did you have some questions for Ann?
Yeah, I did some reading on this, and I apologize for not being able to go from beginning to the end, but we've gone from 9 pages to 23 pages, it looks like, for that particular Code 24. I have some serious problems with the amount of authority that it gives the inspectors in 24.414. It kind of takes away a lot of judicial process, and in my humble opinion, we're going to become an extreme HOA investigators. And I have problems with a lot of the wording, and I'm wondering if Beth has been able to go from page to page or code to code and see where we stand in giving an inspector or the appointee from the town manager that kind of power to go into residences and onto property and things of that nature without some sort of judicial process.
Well, certainly the initial action, the inspector has a lot of authority. But remember that in order to get, for instance, an order of demolition, they would have to come in front of this council to get approval for that. In addition, as far as enforcement, if you'll remember on the Lee Street property, we came to you, we got an order of demolition, and then we proceeded with the demolition. But that was after we had given the owner a hearing. Then there was the hearing that we had in front of you to seek the order of demolition. Then when that was entered, then he was given notice of that. So there are quite a few safeguard steps in between the initial viewing by the inspector as to whether or not it's a situation that calls for an enforcement action. And then the ultimate resolution of that, if in fact you're going to go ahead and we were able to go ahead and demolish it, but only after an order from this, approving it from this council. But enforcement to collect the lien will be in the nature of a judicial action, and a judge will then be passing on that as to whether we can, and ordering whether we can collect our money.
Understood.
So there are some safeguards built in. I understand what you're saying. It does sort of
Well, we're getting into the weeds and talking about the inspector being able to inspect for square footage based on people and ages of kids and all that in the home, HVAC, electrical, those sort of things. This is a county issue as far as I'm concerned. I don't think we need to be into that. I think that we have that, and that's just my opinion, of course, but the power and authority that is given this inspector, I think, really needs to be read and understood by the council. And I would hope that you've had the opportunity, or you would go through and look word for word, because I think it's just given too much authority to the inspector or our inspector, town of Jamestown's inspector. We're not talking about county level. We're talking about what's been appointed by our town manager to just go into to people's residences and make these calls based on what they see inside of houses. Outside, I understand, that's what we started with, was outside, looking at folks and all the different things that go on. We get those reports and understood on that, but now we're going into looking inside the house and taking measurements and square footage and things of that nature. I think we're diving into an area that I don't want to be part of. So have you had the opportunity to look at all the different changes that have come through?
I have, and the only thing I would say about the minimum housing code is it is taken directly from the state statutes. So that isn't something that is going to be specific to Jamestown. Now, I'm not arguing, one way or the other about what's in our minimum housing code. I'm not saying that at all. And certainly, if you want to look at the feasibility of adding any additional oversight, maybe by this council, then before an enforcement action is directed, then we could certainly look at doing that. I realize that some of the things in there give you a pretty broad range of things to look at. My guess is those things are in there because at some point, minimum housing code folks have seen that they need to have that type of oversight for one reason or another. Now, if you ask me what the reason is, I honestly couldn't tell you. To me, it's more of a habitable dwelling issue than anything else.
Right.
To me.
When we have a health inspector and we have county inspectors that do that, I just think that we're going to potentially put an inspector or whoever, what it's calling it as an inspector or an appointee from the town manager. But who's going to enforce going through that front door if the person says, no, I'm not going, you're not coming through my front door?
I think Matthew just pointed out that the county won't take action unless we have it in our ordinance, which makes some sense. I probably should have led with that. But at any rate, if you want us to take a much closer look and maybe give us some guidelines as to where you think it goes a little too far, my suggestion would be, at least off the top of my head, would be to continue to give the planning director that authority, because that's who our inspection officer is. But depending on what level of enforcement is decided upon, then what you may want to do is consider giving the council some oversight as to what that enforcement action is going to be. Now, again, that's kind of off the top of my head, Councilman, kind of trying to respond to what you're worried about.
Right, and there's also wording that planning doesn't have to even be involved. They could actually get Alliance Code based on, not specifically them, but they could appoint, a third party to actually do this. Again, I just think that we're getting into an area that we already have governing bodies that do that. Yeah. So.
I think the attorney and Matthew made a good point that the county would help us with the enforcement of our ordinances, but if we don't have it in our ordinances, then in the past, they have not come in to do that. And by having this in there, we can make a call to the county and say, we think we have a minimum housing code violation, and that would give them the authority to come in and do some of the heavy lifting on the things that you're probably most concerned with. And so most of the communities have that in there, and in many communities I've been in, then if there's something like that, then we will call the county, and the county will come in, certainly in whatever time frame they choose, it seems, but they'll come in and help us out with the heavy lifting. But I think it's wise to include it in there, and if the town manager, needs to direct and oversee, or before such action is taken, it would have approval from the town manager. I think we can put things in there to keep it in a more enforceable thing for a community of our size, and not to intrude on somebody's rights. But it is important sometimes, in some situations that we've done, certainly with habitation in a house, that minimum housing codes, be met. And by having it in there, we allow the county to come in and do that heavy lifting. So it's there as a precursor to them coming in. I think it needs to be in there. But if we want to take a look at it and see, if you really exclude that, then, before we go into a dwelling, type thing that would require, in my mind, approval, from the town manager, and I'd probably be on the phone to the county, to come in and do that for us or with us as we look inside to determine if we have that minimum housing code problem where it comes down to poor habitation for individuals, usually from a landlord and that type thing. So,
Well, I guess part of that, I had some of the thoughts you had. I guess for full disclosure, I did talk with staff, and Brandon was on the telephone while I was asking some of the things. And like one thing I saw in here, it talked about screens. Every dwelling should have screens and your doors. And I said, I don't know that I do have screens, or I have a door that doesn't have a screen door. So, but of course his response was that that's directly from the general statutes. So that's why some of these things are here. That's what the minimum standards are for your North Carolina general statutes. Will that be enforced? No. Probably what would make it enforced would be, like you said, the case of maybe a landlord who was letting the house run down, the tenant has broken windows, the landlord won't fix it, then some of these things would come into play. So you've got to have screens, you've got to fix these windows. So that's a landlord-tenant thing on some of that. But it may be a good idea, since you've brought up these concerns, that, we take another look at this.
well, maybe we could schedule a workshop for the board and go through it in detail, because the last thing your town manager wants to do is to, get you to vote on something that you're not comfortable with. So maybe, Mayor, with your permission at a later date, we could get together in a game planning session and follow up with what it is that we want to accomplish. We do have to, in my opinion, we do have to have these things in there to line up with the ordinance so that we can call for enforcement if we need it. But perhaps there's some provision in there before we trigger those type of things, that we set in some approvals either by the town manager and or the board. So,
such as what Beth talked
yes.
about.
And before we do that, perhaps we can hold a workshop and have Brandon here and our attorney, and we can go through that. If we need county building officials would sit in, whatever resources that we need.
I would appreciate that. I would really need that to feel comfortable in voting for something this tight for the folks of Jamestown, landlord or not. So,
I think so far on the enforcement that we have done from July through mid-November, the 16th, I've actually had compliments from several residents who say, that their property values, they're being protected, and that we have been responsive, and that we have used the utmost customer service and courtesy to those. We've even had thank yous from some folks who have had violations. They said, well, thank you for bringing it to my attention. I didn't know this was an issue. So I think we've done well with what we've done.
Yeah, I've driven by several of the houses that he's listed and looked at some of the complaints that he listed as well. And you see the difference. You could see it. It's very obvious, and I appreciate that. And it's obvious that it's making a difference for those living around those homes. But I've voiced my concerns as far as what this is bringing.
If that would be okay, if there's a consensus on the board that we maybe hold a workshop and go through this until we have.
Well, since we've got all these things lumped together, can we go over each of them before we say we're going to continue it?
Right.
That was the minimum standards. But we also have the sign and then the non-residential. Just if you had, I just had a couple of comments on that. It might be good to get it out there, and then.
What I'd like to do, Katie, tell me if this procedure would be proper, have Sarah speak from the planning board.
Okay.
Then we'll open the public hearing, not close it, so that we can continue it without further advertisement, and then the board can discuss it. In the meantime, we'll have a workshop to review anything, but we can discuss those other issues at that time. Or
Thank you.
Tonight, we can discuss parts of it,
what
that you would like to look at.
So the rest of the council can be thinking about that.
Does that sound
I'm
appropriate?
good with it, and I want to apologize. I just, when I started reading, I had to stop just because of the things that I saw, and that's why I wanted to voice it. I think that we need to, this is, in my opinion, just extreme, and that's why I wanted to make sure that we were all very well versed in it. And I appreciate, Martha, that you were able to have Alliance Code on the phone and talk with them, and, you know, just to be told, well, that's what's in the state code is one thing, but, you know, hearing it and seeing it, listening to Beth's explanation of it will make a huge difference. For me to be able to explain it to my neighbor and saying, well, this is what's coming down the pipe.
Yep.
At this time, I'd like Sarah with her recommendation from the planning board.
Good evening. How is everyone tonight?
Good.
All right. You all have known from my previous appearances, this is not my time to shine of the day. So I've written my comments down this time so they're more coherent. On November 8th, the planning board met and conducted a public hearing on updates to the land development ordinance. There was some minor discussion about the sign ordinances, but it was determined that any substantive, you know what I'm saying, substantive changes should be part of a larger comprehensive revision of that section if deemed necessary in the future. The planning board voted unanimously to recommend the updates to the LDO, the planning board voted unanimously to recommend the updates to the LDO be approved by the town council and voted that such an approval would be consistent with the current comprehensive land development plan. Even reading it, I could barely get through it at this time of day.
You did good.
Do you have any questions at all?
No.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yes, Matthew.
Just wanted to point out, just a little nuance. If you're okay with the sign ordinance components of this, we could move those on and continue the public hearing on the minimum housing code issues.
So we
Just
can
wanted to
break
let-
them up at this point?
We could, if it's the will of the council. I just wanted to make
I have no
that
problem
point.
with that.
So-
Seems reasonable.
May come up, I just wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're good with that?
Well, I mean, I was going to speak a little bit on the sign ordinance.
Okay, and we,
I'm waiting for the public hearing and everything.
at this time, we'll open the public hearing to anyone who would like to speak. Please come to the podium, state your name, address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Okay. Having none, counsel, do you have discussion before we continue this public hearing?
Not at this point.
Well, I got a little bit.
I'm waiting
My
for you.
turn.
Yes.
Trying to be patient. Well, that's good, then, the comments that I had on this, on the minimum standards, we'll work on those, so. But I just really, on the non-residential and the sign ordinance, there's really just one thing I thought that I'd like to see somehow reference to each other. And there was a few other things on this, on the non-residential on page 81 it's showing, but it's just talking about action by the town council upon abandonment or of intent to repair. My question was, it speaks about there's 2 years pursuant to the ordinance or the repair, and I was just wondering when that time limit kicks in. Like, we've got a couple of buildings, well, several, but we know a couple of buildings on Main Street that have been vacant for more than 2 years. So if this were to be enforced, are they already, or does the time clock start when this is effective? Or we say they've been, you know,
Or does it
vacant
start when
for
they were vacant?
3 years now, so.
So it'd be grandfathered in then, wouldn't it?
That's the definition I want a clarification I think we need to make. Then on the sign part though, which is what was the, they've made these other changes. There's abandoned signs is in our sign ordinance. And then we talk about signs, where was that on here? There's just signs on the non-residential ordinance. And where it talks about signs, it doesn't say anything about abandoned signs, like taking those example of businesses that have gone out of business, but they leave their signs up. And it does speak in the sign ordinance a little bit about it. It says that the owner's supposed to take them down, or the town can take them down, bill the owner, but it says the time frame established in the notice of violation. And according to Brandon, it would be up to the inspector as to what that time frame would be. But I think at least we need to have in this non-residential one, at least where it talks about signs, we should add that, something to the effect that, see sign regulation 17.13 abandoned signs, so that these two are in reference to each other. Okay. So I don't know if you can go ahead and adopt this sign ordinance and just, or if you, I guess you could really just add the reference on the non-residential ordinance here about, see, the sign regulation 17.13.
What page was the sign?
On which one, on the sign regulation? It's on
Non-residential.
Page 86.
86J.
Okay.
Yes. You know, or I think we even talked about, okay, if you don't remove the sign, turn the sign around so it's a blank canvas. Or if it's a stationary sign, it's painted so it's a blank canvas. And you don't have the name of a business that's been out of business for 2 or 3 years.
Kind of like the one in front of the old dry.
Well, but this still has Jamestown Dry Cleaners on it, yeah, and everything. And Try Screen Printing is still
on the
over
other
there.
Well, I think it's a good idea to at least reference them, so you have some guidance.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I would say on an ordinance, you can't go back and enforce an ordinance before it's adopted. So I think when the ordinance is adopted, that would be the time that you would find a violation. And we did not have certainly a commercial, code for the town to address this. And, several folks have come forth and complained about these things, and we did not have tools to do that type thing, nor did we have any staffing. So now we have provided some services, and when the ordinance is adopted, then we can begin to address some of these things. But if it's been a violation for 8 years by the new ordinance, I can't go back 8 years. I have to start from the date that the ordinance was adopted.
Would there be any grandfathering in for existing stuff that's out there, since we're starting something?
No, I think, when there's a new law or a new ordinance, just because it hadn't been done in the past, I think everybody would be, have to meet it at that point. And of course, I think we would certainly not go in heavy-handed and, we would go to folks and say, here's this new ordinance, take a look at it. When do you think you might be able to address this issue? A couple months, well, that sounds good to us. In other words, we would use that approach for the ones that have been sitting there. I mean, that's sort of the good neighbor policy. We want to make people know, what the changes are, let them know, what they need to do, and give them a reasonable time period to do it. And I think that's the thing that has made our code enforcement work, because I think that's what we've done.
Thank you.
So can we split apart the signs, or can we not?
I think we should just continue the public
You wanna
hearing
keep them all together?
and talk about all of them.
Okay. Do I have a motion to continue?
Motion to continue?
To the December 21st meeting
I thought we'd
without
already did
further
that.
advertisement.
Oh. Motion to continue for the December 21st meeting, sorry.
With no further advertisement.
With no further advertisement. I'll get it right in a while.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
And just to clarify, that is for all three.
Correct.
Correct?
Dave, do you have a manager's report for us?
Yes. One of the things that, one of our goals is a strategic growth plan, and we're taking a look at several different things. We're taking a look at water, we're taking a look at sewer to see capacity and availability. We're looking at garbage collection, we're looking at recycling collection, and we were also looking, at police protection by the sheriff to see what impact that would have, the development of property like the Johnson Farm and other properties would have. Do we have the capacity? And one of the things that the mayor and the board, the council entered into an agreement with Pine Cross Sedgefield Fire Department. We have Derek Carson, the fire chief, here tonight, and I wanted to share the results of the fire location study to see, what the best site was for the location of a service to serve an expanded area. And he has the results of that study. Many of you know what those results are, but the public may or may not. So we'll share the details that support the final recommendation. And I wanted to introduce Derek Carson, our excellent fire chief.
Thank you.
Welcome. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Welcome back. Yep. More often, it seems. So, like the manager said, I wanted to come to you tonight and present to you the results of the fire study that we conducted that we just recently finished. And so, due to the real reason behind that was due to the current change in growth in Jamestown, as well as the projected growth that's going to take place in Jamestown. We wanted to evaluate both our current performance that we're having now, as well as project our future needs, growth, and demands in the future. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing our due diligence as emergency service responders in Jamestown to make sure that we were making a well-informed decision moving forward in the practices that we put into place. And everything as far as the station location of where we are currently and any impact that the town may, or that we would see based off demand and other things that we'll kind of go into. So I just want to try and make a brief review of this, but without going into how they came about the study, it's hard to understand how the results were projected and put out there. So I'm going to touch on those just briefly as we move through. So we contracted with Beacon GIS to complete this study that would look at our current, like we talked about, our current demands and our current fire station locations, primarily in Jamestown, which is what we were focusing our efforts as well. But Station 23, which is located on Mackey Road, is the second due fire station into this district. So we also wanted to consider that as well and see how that impact would, with the growth in Jamestown, would affect that. So Beacon GIS came highly recommended and experienced. This is their specialty. They've done over 200 projects like this across the U.S. And so we were very excited to partner up with them and allow a third party to come in, not just what we may see, but an unbiased party to come in and look at that. So obviously, I just want to note that the exact plans for any development at the former Johnson Farm have not been finalized at the time of this report. So some of the numbers and stuff that we looked at through the report were numbers that we needed, that we generated for, I won't say a worst case, but we wanted to inflate those numbers so that we didn't come back and say, well, we didn't consider that high of a number or that low of a number. So we wanted to try and make sure that we were doing, again, our due diligence with that. But we generated those numbers as a fire department based off what we wanted to be able to see that we could fulfill our needs and requirements as. So I do want to note that as you look, you can see, I don't have a pointer, but the road network that's showing where the former Johnson Farm is, that network's to measure potential distances and available performance from the fire stations. We had to have a road network to be able to measure that stuff. So the road network you see on the map is not a final plan or even one that's been presented to council from the owner. That was an old map that a former party had generated, which for the sake of this study allowed us to generate data we needed. So we know this will change, but I do want to make that clear that the road network that is there is something, again, that was generated from a former map. So there were three main items that we looked at and actually Beacon GIS looked at when evaluating our study. There's a lot of things that impact the fire department, but the three main things were population, demand for service, and land risk. So those are the three things that I just want to hit on tonight and show you that's how the results came from. We did want to look at any potential addition of workload for the two stations, or primarily Jamestown, Station 46, our response capability with the growth that's taken place in the town, any ISO insurance rating effects that we may see and how we may need to adjust for that, and any possible relocation. So as I said, they looked at, I'm going to touch back on this later, but the three things that come together to look at this vulnerability risk index, which is what gives us our projections, is population, demand for service, and land use. For the sake of this study, the population that was generated through Beacon GIS was around 4,500 in Jamestown. That gave us, as you can see on the heat map up here, the green is where less populated, and the darker shades are more populated areas of our district. The second step on the population was the average, was future projections on population. And so the average family size in the surrounding census block group is estimated to be 2.99 persons. So that number was used to generate a future population estimate. Demands for services. We used 5 years worth of data. GIS, the company said that 3 years worth of data would be great. We gave them 5 years, which would allow us to even get better results and data for the report. Again, demand for service currently, you can see in the area, correlates with population. Portions of our district, as you know, we serve 52 square miles of district, so further south is less populated, less demand. Around Jamestown is our most populated, as well as Station 23 in and around Adams Farm. So there is higher demand for service as it correlates with the heat map, as you see. Some of the darker shades are rehab facilities at Shannon Gray and Adams Farm, living in rehab. One item to note is just on this demand and then our future expected demand, any changes throughout the district are growth that we're looking at currently. So as you see, the former Johnson Farm in between the two red areas right now is green because there is zero demand for service in that area, obviously. But as we look at expected demand for service, it just correlates with that census block that we used with relative area. So we know that any development, not to say that what may happen, but any development on a tract that size would obviously generate future demand. Based off those numbers, they got an estimate of 165 potentially additional calls a year. Right now, we're already running over 700 calls in Jamestown. So that demand or workload is not going to greatly increase or put us outside of what we can currently do. So, and then the expected risk, which is kind of the third part of the triangle that looks at it. And this is based off land use, which was generated from the town, both the new land use areas of the town. So not just the former Johnson Farm, but other areas around the Publix in that area, anywhere that there would be that has considered future growth, and what those land use would be considered for was played into this. The green is more residential, single family spread apart residential, like in the more rural areas, and then the red is your highest risk, commercial, higher risk impact, univar, different things to where if there was a fire in those areas, flowers, there's higher, they're deemed as higher risk because it may displace a lot of workers, not necessarily life risk, but the impact to the community. So those three things were put together and generated to not only look at one area, but to try and look at all these different areas that affect fire service. They were each given a score based off their risk level, their population in different areas. So that score could be from 3 to 15 for the sake of this vulnerability risk index. And so our district was overlaid with our fire service district, a hexagonal grid was digitally constructed and overlaid atop of it, as you see there. There was over, for the whole district, 200 and some cells for that area, obviously not as many. But the combined scores were applied to these areas to create a VRI, or Vulnerability Risk Index. And the lowest score, like I said, would be a 3, while the highest would be a 15. Green is the lowest scores in the district, whereas orange, or the darker shades, are a higher score. So all these things are computed into where the current locations are and how the fire stations can reach these areas in the 4-minute travel time. 4 minutes is looked at by our response standard through ISO and different things. And so that's where, at that point, we can put these things into or they put these items into the computer, and at that point, let the computer pick where fire stations should be. Can pick them up and say, tell us, based off this information that we've put in, the demand for service, projected demand, where should fire stations be on a clean canvas. And obviously, in today's world, fire stations are already in place throughout the U.S., but when they look at new areas or how things should be changed for future growth, sometimes there are areas that fire stations do need to move. So several scenarios were developed by Beacon GIS to determine the impact upon these current stations. And they use geographic intelligence technology, like I talked about, to look at it and see where the best locations would be, using travel time models to reach the hexagons. So a 45%, as you see there, was our baseline, used based off coverage throughout our district. Obviously, in Jamestown, we're better at those numbers, but when we look, those numbers are as our district as a whole. In more rural areas, that's what hurt that number, because the fire stations, it takes longer to get to those areas, but that's where the 45 comes into play. And so they used that, placed it, and I want to just show you what that looks like. So scenario A was, say, an optimal site for station 46. The computer system anchors every other station and say, where should station 46 be located? That's what we really wanted to know. And surprisingly, it put it actually south, well, I guess east, down on Main Street, down at the bottom near the bridge. It doesn't look at terrain, topography, any of that stuff, so you're coming out of a hole. So at that point, knowing that, it says we're less than a mile, half a mile from that location. Where the site sits right now is the optimal site, given all the information that was put into the software. But we also want to look at other scenarios, as to say optimal site for Station 23, anchor in Jamestown, because we know 23 has a big impact on the backside of that for us to be able to respond to that area right up Mackey Road if and when that would be developed. What it told us was where Station 23 sits right now is in an optimal spot. So then we said they said optimal site for Station 23 and 46. Let them both go wherever they need to go, place them where they should, and it said to place them in the same current footprints that they're at right now. So that was interesting. I'll just show this portion as well. They did say, put Station 46 up at that property at the former Johnson Farm area, anchor everything else, and what does that do for us? Because we wanted to know, should we move closer to different areas, or this is only one scenario, but we looked at others as well. What it did was it decreased our score by doing that. So it did say, as in the other, that the optimal site would be close to where the footprint sits right now. So in summary, the current stations can serve this area and other areas throughout Jamestown as a whole adequately sitting where they're sitting. That's great news for us, and that's great foresight in the planning that took place years ago, looking at the town. And if you look at the town's footprint itself, this area in Town Hall is very central to the overall. But like I said, we wanted to make sure that we were doing our due diligence as an emergency service responder and fire department to make sure that we were making informed decisions, not just what we thought, but let the data speak for itself, and it did just that. So our next steps are obviously looking at, if we're showing where we are as a good location, how can we plan and for that growth moving forward internally as a fire department. When the station next door was built, the size of the department was nowhere near what it is today. That's great, because now we're responding with 3 people on a truck opposed to 1 or people coming to get the truck. But then we have to be able to adequately house and do that as well on site. So those will be some things for the next steps that we look at with council and staff to see, planning for the future, what the best location on site, or what the best layout, renovation, what things we may need to do down the road. So any questions on that study, I'll be glad to answer. A copy of that can also be given to council for any review as well.
I'm just curious about one thing. You mentioned the 45% within 4 minutes. What is the target time frame generally? Just out of curiosity.
So our target is 4 minutes.
Okay.
There's a lot that goes into that. That's travel time.
Right.
So en route, turnout time is a big thing as well that we speak of a lot. And so that the investment that we made in the last year has decreased our turnout time, how fast we get out of the station. 6 minutes is an overall, that turnout time plus the travel time for a total response time. We want to be in under 6 minutes. From time of dispatch to time on scene would be 6 minutes. So the one thing that we know that we can control is how quick we get out of the station. Drive time and the roads are what they are. So that's 6 minutes overall is our goal from time of dispatch to time on scene. That number is for the most part, 90 percentile is what we work off of, and it's lower than that for the 90 percentile.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I've had a couple of families that have used the service over the last couple of months, and they've been very impressed with the turnout and how quick it gets there. So, Chief, this is some excellent information.
Yep.
Thank you for the presentation. Good stuff.
Yeah, and thank y'all for partnering up and allowing us to get this study. It was a quick turnaround from Beacon GIS. We were pleased with that. And I would like to just thank the staff. Robert McNally thanked the staff as well for the information that they were able to get to them. He said it was probably one of the easier studies he's had as far as once you put the information in, the study does what it does. But getting that information can sometimes be troublesome. But the staff here has definitely helped get that to him very quick, along with the county and other resources that we use. So thank y'all, Matt, and the staff for that too.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you, sir.
you.
And just, I guess for the public's consumption is, the ISO rating is from 1 to 10. And we have 2. And 1 being the very best, and we have excellent fire service and an excellent delivery of fire service through Pine Cross Sedgefield. And Derek has been a pleasure for us to work with. He's very responsive and, does a great job for the town of Jamestown. So y'all certainly made great decisions in the past about using them. One thing I wanted to do and wrap up with is I know one of the goals for the town was to make sure that our public services group, and under Paul's leadership, had the proper training. We have the water and the wastewater distribution system. And I would like to report that Jamie Johnson earned his B distribution certification. And Jonathan Knight, a B distribution certification. And all of these are not here for a good reason, but they wanted to be, but not able. Phil Cooper got the C distribution certification. Tyler Humble got the C distribution certification. So they studied hard. They took the test. They did well, and they have increased their value to the community in serving the citizens of Jamestown.
That's great.
And one other thing before I close it out is that we wanted to bring to your attention that Phil Mickles, who has served here 20 years, and through thick and thin, and neither, I wouldn't say this, but Phil and I don't talk about thin much, but but he's been here and has made a major contribution to our community, and he has announced his retirement on January 1st, 2022, and I know that we all want to honor Phil at a retirement party, and Phil has agreed that we would have one of those. Phil walks in humility and doesn't want anybody to make much of a fuss over him. but he has agreed to come to his retirement party. And we are delighted. And it's planned for December, and we will keep you posted on the date and the time and the location once plans have been finalized. And Phil, at 20 years, he's been with the town, and Phil is a key person on our water and wastewater distribution system. And so, but he has announced his retirement to the town, and I wanted to bring that to your attention. And as soon as we have something for the calendar, we will let you all know. And that's really all I have. I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Phil walks out the door with a lot of knowledge.
Oh, yeah,
He's done a lot for this town.
yeah.
Congratulations on the retirement.
Council, do we have any committee reports?
Go ahead.
Okay, I've got two. On November 4th, the AARP Livable Communities Committee met to talk about next steps after we were made aware of our designation, and so we're talking about next steps of what the group is going to do. And Bob Gherkin, who is here, has been a great help with that and mentioned that typically communities do a community-wide survey of, well, just the general population, but especially looking at seniors in the area, and that AARP does have an online system that they use and can kind of, it's standardized, and we're taking this next month or month and a half to kind of look over those questions that they already have and see if they would apply to Jamestown. So far, it looks good. And so we're going to meet back up in January and kind of talk over how we would want to launch that and work with staff, of course. AARP has also offered a free shred event for Jamestown as sort of a thank you for becoming part of the Livable Communities Initiative. And so we'll also be working with staff to see when the best time to do that might be. So that,
right.
I know it was the last one was so popular. We had people coming up and down the street. So
That's great.
I think we could add another one and not take away from anything. Let's see, also Planning Board met November 8th and voted unanimously to recommend or push up the rezoning of the now Horton property to council, so we'll be seeing that.
I had the TAC meeting, we had one on October the 26th, which there was just a lot of discussion about, of course, I think last time I reported how everything is coming over budget, and projects are coming over budget, and really they're having a difficult time on how to combat this. So anyhow, they have a work group that's working on making sure that there will be funds available for these projects in like the 2026 to 2035 for funding all transportation improvement categories. So like I said, they've been discussing inflation, cost increases, the federal infrastructure bill, and grant funding, the labor costs, material cost delays. Anyway, all of these things is a work in progress that they're working on in Raleigh, and they will keep us updated as they know more. Well, since then, of course, we had a meeting this morning, and they said, well, the infrastructure bill, of course, was just signed. But there again, this is federal funds that will go to the state, and then the state will give them to DOT, and then we'll have an idea of what may actually come out to Jamestown. So again, another thing of not sure now, too soon to tell. But those funds will be, once distributed, over a 5-year period. And of course, we all know they're roads and highways and bridge repair, public transportation, airports, rail divisions. So it's yet to say what actually Jamestown will benefit from, but certainly we will at some point. And then, of course, the meeting I had with Wright, Paul has really covered that for you.
Okay. Thank you. Ron, did you have any committees?
No, ma'am.
Lawrence? No, ma'am. Okay. In that case, we'll move on to Marlene Conway, and we welcome you to the table. What do you have to report to us from Ragsdale High School?
So tonight's event, we had a GAP program meeting tonight, which is the Guilford Apprenticeship program, and that started at 5 and it goes to 8:30 p.m. tonight. We have a poetry night tomorrow, which is Wednesday at 5 p.m. There's a holiday band concert coming up Thursday, December 9th at 7 p.m. And all of these events are free events, and the community is invited to join. All of our winter sports started this week, which includes wrestling, swimming, and basketball. Many of these sports have already started practice, but it's officially that the games or meets start either this weekend going on. All the schedules are posted on the Ragsdale Athletic page. Our first swim meet is this Saturday at 7:30 a.m. We have and swimming. I do swimming, so we have practices 3 days a week. I'm also part of the National Honors Society. We have events every once in a while. Our last event was a trunk or treat the Saturday before Halloween, and all the kids got to come and trick or treat in the Ragsdale parking lot. And this week we have a canned food drive for Hope Club, and it started on Monday and goes till Friday.
Where is that being collected? At the school?
At the school, yes.
Thank you, Marlene.
Swim practice at the Y?
We were doing it at Smith High School. We just got approval to do it at the Y, so we practice. This is our first week starting at the Y. We started Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Wednesdays is still at Smith High School.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Katie, do we have anyone signed up for public comment period?
Nobody signed up.
Council, do you have any other business?
Just one thing. From earlier, I just wanted to speak to the phrase "done deal" as it relates to everything else that's going on with the D.R. Horton property. I think it's important that we get out there publicly that as far as a done deal, there is no done deal at this point. And every month when we have a meeting, there always seems to be 4 or 5 people who have been, who show up that seem to think that this meeting is going to be the ultimate moment that everything's going to be done. And I just want to say one more time to anybody who's listening that this is a process. It's a long process. And it's a process that is going to go into next year. And we still, there's a lot to be done. And frankly, this council is at a point where we're just waiting so we have an opportunity to act as a council. So I just wanted to say that.
Say it a little louder, that it's not a done deal.
It's not a done deal.
And there's also been coverage in the Jamestown News and Triad Business Journal and several other, local media publications that, you can find out good information about this, in addition to on the town's website and coming to town meetings and watching old town meetings, that type of thing. So I hope people will take advantage of all those opportunities to learn more about the process, and feel free to call us if they want to do that too.
Our numbers are listed on the website.
Yes.
Please.
I just was wondering if, we had the Veterans Day ceremony, and I had some of the public asking me if we have any more information about the bathrooms at Ren Miller, when they may be going to be built. Listen, I know they're in the budget.
Yes, so Scott has been working on that. I know that he's gotten several quotes in, but we haven't decided on any final plans or exactly who will do that. So he is getting some quotes together for that now.
It'd be great, if you can let us know something, because I have had a lot of people ask me that.
Absolutely. Yep, thank you.
And then I wondered, for some of you guys, again, I had a lot of talk about the Christmas on Main, and what, the last go-round, we had the town hall open foyer, and some of us taking turns, but I don't know if any of y'all had
I can speak to it.
gotten that, please.
So right now, it's still a work in progress, but we're making good headway. So in the first place, this is a unique month, December, because we're going to have 4 Wednesdays, where normally we have 3. We will be doing this throughout those 4 Wednesdays. We're in the process of pulling together the different businesses that are willing to participate, which I'm happy to say there are quite a few. We want it to be more like what it was 2 years ago, as opposed to what it was last year due to COVID.
Yeah.
But we do want to make sure that we're doing this safely. We don't want to create a super spreader event or anything of that nature. Now, we have gotten confirmation on the trolley one more time, which was a hit the last time around. We're working out a few details. One of the details specifically is that we will request anyone riding the trolley will be masked, and likewise show the same respect to the storefronts and the stores themselves, as a lot of them are asking for the same thing. We want to maintain the spirit of community and of Christmas, and being able to truly do what we're really good at when it comes to Jamestown in general, because, we all know we have a great town here. And so there's still a lot of things that we're nailing down. Yes, we are going to have a drawing like we did 2 years ago. This will be a lot more interactive. We will have, we're working on the choirs at this point, so we have music. And as far as the town hall piece, I need to have some offline discussions about that.
Yeah, that's what obviously, I'm sure a lot of us like to volunteer.
Absolutely.
And do like we did last time, so.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing I wanted to add, Madam Mayor, was just made aware today, there is a food box that was just erected here at Jamestown United Methodist Church. I just thought it was
just heard
just
about
up
it.
today. And was told that anyone that would like, anyone can go there and get food. The church is maintaining it, but if there's any volunteers, individuals, families, or businesses that would like to maintain it for a week or something like that, you call the church and they would be glad to do it. This was an Eagle Scout project, and there will be I do not know who the Eagle Scout was, but there will be a celebration for him and a dedication of that, so we can learn that. It should be forthcoming. I think there's going to be an article in the paper, I heard, but I thought it was really neat and a great idea.
And they're calling it a blessing box.
Blessing box.
So that it
okay.
can be
Yeah.
used to bless anyone
Yeah,
who
I
needs it.
think that's great. And that was all I had.
Just like to say, we've been through a difficult election process, and I want to congratulate Rebecca and Martha on the 4-year terms, and for the rest of the folks that were elected back in, it was a difficult time. Thank you, Dave, for putting together the information session that you did for the opponents. I guess you could call all of us an opponent, but for the other folks that ran against the sitting council, I appreciate that you did that. I was very disappointed in some of the things that the opponents said in different phases. I think they learned a lot through this process, and I think that the town voters of Jamestown spoke up, and I appreciate that. Thank you for the opportunity to serve once again, and looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Well said.
Any other comments? Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
What he
And that
said, second.
is related to personnel matters?
Yes, ma'am.
So related to personnel matters.
Thank you.
I seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Motion to go back into session?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
Motion to
opposed?
adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Good night, y'all.